So my name is David McBain. I am an audit partner at Johnston, Carmichael, Chartered Accountants. So I am based actually in Elgin, although I work across our office network in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen and London and various other locations.
Interesting, thank you so much. And why did you decide to study at the University of Aberdeen?
Yeah, so I think there were a number of reasons for me. I guess one of the key considerations was I wanted to go to a university that had some heritage, that had some history. I love the feel of the university when I went to see it, the history of it, the setting. It felt really connected with the city, and it had a very good reputation when I went there to study accountancy. So I did look at a few other locations, but Aberdeen was always my first choice. It is a local university for me. I did live relatively locally, but I think that the biggest consideration was just feeling like you were a small part of a big history and an organisation that had some real standing. So it felt like it would set me up well for the rest of my career. So I was really keen to go to Aberdeen.
Thank you so much. And what inspired you to study accountancy?
Yeah, so I did study accountancy when I was at school. It's a subject that I really enjoyed. I've always liked numbers in terms of, those were the subjects that I tended to gravitate to were the numeric based ones. And I really liked the idea of a career in accountancy and what that could enable you to do, but also recognising that an accountancy background can open doors to so many other disciplines as well. So I didn't feel like I was committing myself to a lifelong career in accounting at the time, but I felt like it would be a qualification that would be really valuable whatever I decided to do, even though my thought at the time was that I would continue in accountancy, but I felt like it was flexible enough to give me some other options.
Interesting, thank you. And what are some of your favourite memories from being a student at the University of Aberdeen?
Yeah, so I as I mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed it being part of the city, it having that connection. I met some friends there who are still friends. I made connections that are now business colleagues and contacts of mine. A lot of the facilities were great. I remember some of the lectures in King's and so on, and just being part of those buildings in many ways, the history that had gone through there. And I made some really good connections with the university, with the department, who were really supportive of me. They gave me opportunities to get involved in some additional projects when I was there, and just the challenge of it. I felt like you were given a lot of freedom to think and to learn. It wasn't overly prescriptive. I was able to, unlike some other universities, I was able to do a thesis, a dissertation, which I really enjoyed doing, and it felt like it set you up well without talking down to you and teaching you everything that you needed to know. It really suited me as somebody who is a bit of a self-learner, so I was able to do that. I spent a lot of time in the library, not the new one that was there now, but the one that preceded it, and it just was a really great venue for learning, but also a great one for meeting people and being part of it. So I did really felt like I got the blend of both the academic and the social when I was there.
Thank you, that's very interesting. And if you had to summarize your career, what would be key milestones in your journey?
Yeah, so maybe unlike some people, I'm never somebody who set out with a plan of this is where I want it to be in 10, 15, 20 years time. I wouldn't say it completely happened by accident, but I've always been somebody that's just focused on what is the next thing that I want to achieve. And as long as I felt like there was momentum in my career, then I've always been happy with that. I think, you know, one of the real milestones for me was becoming head of audit at Johnston Carmichael. So that happened in around 2011, and I became a partner around about the same time. So these were really key milestones that I still remember, but you know, even from then, just the other things that have followed from that, you know, getting involved in the international network, that was something that was really interesting for me. Taking on a role in our audit board when we put that together, and then latterly, I think really specialising within financial services audit, which has been, you know, something that I've really enjoyed. So there's been so many good moments and so many milestones, but I've never felt like my career was headed on a single path. I've just enjoyed every step forward as I've gone along.
Very impressive as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you stayed with the same company for 26 years. What made you stay here?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been asked this question a few times. It quite often comes up when I interview candidates, and they ask me this question at the end of an interview, and my answer's always been the same. I didn't know at the outset that I would still be here 25 years later, but my criteria has always been: am I treated well? Am I given opportunities? Do I feel like I can influence the organisation in which I'm in? And as long as the answer to those questions has continued to be yes, I felt like this is an environment in which I can grow my career, in which I can grow professionally, in which I can continue to learn, continue to develop. And one of the most enjoyable, maybe even the most enjoyable parts of my career has been seeing other people come through the organisation, has been seeing, you know, the way in which I can help them, even in small ways along the road, and that's really, really satisfying when you see other people learn and develop and, you know, become very successful in their own careers. And it's really allowed me to do that by putting down some roots within an organisation, by becoming, you know, well-known, trusted, but also being supported within that organisation. So I've been fortunate in a way that I've been able to get so much out of the firm that I've been in, and hopefully get quite a lot back, but it's felt like it's given me the chance to do so many of the things that I would have wanted to achieve in my career. So I felt like the need to move hasn't really come up too often for me, which I think is a good sign. So,
what is your current role and responsibilities? What do you do, and how does your typical day look like?
Yeah, so this is a difficult one to answer because there is no typical day, and that is one of the great things about the role. I think sometimes people go into the accountancy profession and they move into industry, and that's a great opportunity for some people, but I understand that can become quite a repetitive monthly cycle, and it's really not like that at all for me anyways. So I do have a number of different roles within the firm, but if you like, my day-to-day job is a financial services audit partner, but your typical day can be anything from meeting clients, travelling to see them, virtual meetings, talking to them about the audit findings, making recommendations about where you think they can improve as organisations, working with the team, supporting the team, reviewing their work, training, coaching, dealing with any of their potential difficulties that come up, working with my other roles, so as one of the board members in our audit practice at Johnston Carmichael, preparing for meetings, reviewing the materials of that, sitting in meetings, discussing contentious issues that come up, working through regulatory reviews, helping with that. So it's so varied, and that's, as I say, for me is one of the things that I find really enjoyable, and I think being able to sort of grow with your clients as they adapt and change as well means that even though you might come and you might do the same job as you did a year ago, it still feels sufficiently different to be fresh every time that you do it. So I love the variety, I love the travel aspects of the role, getting out and about, seeing as many people as I can, being as visible within the team as possible, and just getting as much out of it as you can. I think there is that feeling that the more you put in, the more satisfaction you'll get out of your career, and I try to do as much of that as I can.
Very interesting. And for our students who are looking to get into audit, what would be your advice? How to stand out?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is that there is no one route into audit, and even more so these days. So we do employ a lot of graduates. They come from different disciplines. They come from accountancy background, but they come from all sorts of other degree specialisms as well. And we also employ school leavers, so we have a futures programme, which means that people can come straight into the business, and then they can still become a qualified accountant. It takes longer, but they skip that degree stage. Although I think there is certainly something to be gained from having that university experience as well before you come into the profession. I think what would make people stand out, I think sometimes there can be a feeling, it's maybe a stereotype that accountants, well, they're good with numbers, but they're maybe not that good with people, or they're quite academic. But actually, it's really important being a good communicator. So I think you need that ability to connect with people. So a little bit of confidence is good, not overconfidence. You want to build relationships, you want to connect with people, you want to have a level of empathy, so that you can understand things from your client's perspective, but you also need a bit of kind of impartial calmness as well, just to be able to distance yourself from that when you need to, and form an independent view on things. So I think as long as people have got those sort of underlying personal qualities plus an interest in learning, I think people will do well within the audit profession. I think the biggest quality for me, actually, when I talk about interest in learning, is just curiosity. People sometimes say, "Oh, how do you know that?" And the reality is that there's no simple answer to that. It's just having an interest in finding things out. So sometimes the answer is not going to be easy. You can ask somebody, but having that interest in going and investigating things. We talk sometimes in audit about pulling a thread, and sometimes you see something and you go, "Oh, that looks a bit odd." And the easy thing to do is go, "Oh, that might not be relevant, let's just move on and forget about it." But having that interest to go and ask a few questions or go and look a little bit deeper into it is really what sets good auditors apart from others. So I really think if you've got a little bit of curiosity and interest in finding things out, then that again can really help you do really well within your career.
Thank you. And for somebody who is looking to get started in audit, how does the progression looks like? Where do you start? Do you start as a graduate and you get your CA qualification? And how do your responsibilities change as you progress? Yeah, so you're absolutely right. That would be your typical route into the audit profession. I would say that 3/4 of our team probably do start as graduates. They'll come into our audit team as audit assistants. They get a lot of training in those first couple of years. They obviously work through the professional qualifications as well at that time, whether that's with ICAS, the Scottish Institute, or ACCA, a global institute. Usually, all being well, after a couple of years, they will then move on to an audit senior role, which I think is a great step up for people, because what usually happens at that point is they then start to be the first point of contact, the first point of training
for the people who are starting a couple of years after them. And it really boosts your confidence when you start becoming the trainer rather than the trainee in some ways. And you'll still keep learning, but it really does cement that you've come on a long way in those couple of years. Usually then when people qualify, if they stay within the business, then they'll set their sights on how do they then move through into the manager ranks. And from there, it's really what people make of it. I appreciate that not everyone who goes into the profession wants to become a partner, but certainly within our organisation, there is a pathway to partner. There's a route for people, and if people want to pursue that, then it's certainly an opportunity that's there for people. And I'd like to think that having gone through that route, and many others around me having gone through that route, it shows that that route is there. But also we know that not everyone does, and sometimes people move on to other organisations, move on to business roles, and we often come across those in our clients. So that professional network, that connections for us is also really useful, even when people decide they don't want to spend the rest of their career within the profession. So it's a great place to come in and learn about business, to gain some really valuable skills, to work towards a really rewarding career, whether that's within the profession or outside of the profession. So it's one that I'd really actively encourage somebody to pursue if it feels right for them.
Thank you very much. And are there any books or podcasts you would recommend for our students? It might be career or non-career related. Maybe there are some books which are inspirational for you.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would say that books probably haven't been a huge part of my professional learning. When I was doing my professional qualifications, they absolutely were. So you'll get given lots of notes and notes of materials. You'll get given some other reference points as well. What I have found really helpful is, and this is credit to the Big Four firms, which we're not part of, but the Big Four firms do produce really, really good technical resources for auditors and professional accountants. So if you're looking for help, support, guidance on how to apply the accounting standards, then they have some fantastic reference materials, and we subscribe to a number of those, and those are accessible to our team day in, day out, and they help a lot, I would say. Beyond that though, I think it's more about finding what you're really interested in. So for me, as I've said, I work within financial services audit, so I've only relatively recently got into podcasts, but I tend to listen to a lot of podcasts on the financial markets, which they're not directly related to my role, but they're closely connected to it. And one of the reasons that I enjoy working in financial services audit is that I find the whole financial markets things really, really interesting. The more I learn, the more valuable I find that. So I find those really topical. There's one or two that I listen to quite regularly, and there are lots of them out there. So if it's something that interests you, then go and find the ones that are right for you. Some of them I don't particularly like, but it really does give you an outside perspective on what's going on within financial markets, what makes good companies, what influences their share price, what's going on within the economic environment, within the political environment that could impact on company value. So I think it's just back to that curiosity thing. I think it's it's great to have something that's not directly relevant to your role, but which maybe stimulates a bit of wider interest. So for me, that's where I do quite a lot of my continual learning in.
Interesting. And why should students choose smaller accounting firms over Big Four?
Yeah, so I might be biased here because I work within, we'd probably class ourselves as mid-tier. So we're very definitely not Big Four. but I understand that the Big Four environment will be right for some people. I think the main difference is that, you know, the Big Four, they're global employers, tens of thousands of people. We're around about 1,000 people. So we have got scale, but we have also got personalisation. So I feel like we can give people more individualised careers than they will get within the Big Four. I feel like it gives us the opportunity to work on a closer basis, maybe with a less hierarchical structure, in my opinion anyway, but a great opportunity to learn, some fantastic clients, some great people, but just feeling like you have a bit more opportunity, a bit more flexibility to influence. And you know, there are other differences. As I say, I do understand for some people the appeal of the multinational global employer has got some merit, but I've been fortunate that I've been able to travel internationally through my own work. So, you know, it does create those opportunities as well. But I feel we talk a lot in our strategy about impact, and I think that's probably the biggest difference is, you know, there's a great opportunity to impact. We're not going to tell everyone how to do it, but we give people an environment in which it's encouraged, a culture in which it's encouraged, and you know, that gives people quite a lot of space to make a difference in whatever way they feel they can. And you know, I like being part of that. So I think that's, if you feel like that's you, then you probably would benefit from being in a mid-tier or on a smaller boutique firm compared to maybe one of the very largest firms.
Very interesting, thank you. And last two questions are, would you say networking is important, and how can students benefit from it?
Sorry, could you, I didn't catch the question.
Would you say networking is important, and how can students benefit from it?
Would you say working is important?
Networking,
yes indeed, yeah, sorry. So, yes I would. Maybe that's an obvious and simple answer. I would really say that networking is not something that you should think, well, that should just come later in my career. That's for the partners and the leaders in the business. I would encourage people to start networking as soon as they can. I do recognise that when you're a trainee accountant, you've got your work to do, you've got studies, you've got important exams to get through, and that's difficult. But maybe once you come out the other side of that, just get involved in things, because the more you network, the more you realise that, you know, networking is a long-term process. You don't network and then the next day you get a whole load of new work coming into the business. It's very much about building trust, building relationships, getting to know people, and the older I get, the more value I get out of it, and it's just because of the time that I've spent. So, you know, just sometimes reconnecting with people might be as simple as dropping them a message, meeting them for a coffee, taking them for lunch, going to see them, just keeping yourself reasonably front of mind. And it is, you know, I've found over time that, you know, maybe it's somebody that I've met for the first time 5 or 10 years ago, and then it's at that point that an opportunity comes from it. So it's not an instant thing, it works both ways. You have to be prepared to give a lot of time. Sometimes you'll give them an opportunity before they give you an opportunity. Sometimes you'll never get an opportunity. It's not a selfish process, but it's being prepared to put yourself out there, to get yourself better known, to showcase what it is you're about, to let people see maybe a side of yourself that you don't always show in the office. Maybe it's a little bit more of a social side, but I think it's hugely valuable, but it is long term, so it's not something to be discouraged by if you think, well, I've gone to a few events and nothing's really happened. It's very much in the long term, you will get the benefit if you put the time and effort into networking. You just need to be prepared to work on it. It's really rewarding. Sometimes people say, I'm not comfortable with it, it's not me, I don't I don't like going into a room full of strangers. I find it difficult to do, and the reality is that most people find it difficult to do, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the more you get out of it. So I would say start somewhere, recognise that it probably will feel a bit uncomfortable, but the more you put into it, the more likely that when you go to events in the future, you see people that you know, you can reconnect with them, they introduce you to other people, and your network really just grows exponentially from there. So I hugely encourage people to do it. I think it's a big part of the profession, but don't be put off if you find it initially difficult to do.
Thank you very much. And the last question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, that's a great question. So, what would I give to my younger self? I think it's probably like as I've said to you earlier, I've been lucky that I've been able to grow a career within a single organisation. There are times that I look back and I think, gosh, I wish I'd handled that situation slightly differently. And I think, you know, one of the best things I've learned over the years is to try and take the emotion out of difficult situations. It is hard when you're put under pressure. You maybe get a bad reaction from a client to something. Maybe you've made a mistake and you have to unpick it. And right in the heat of the moment, you can lose a bit of the neutrality, you can lose a bit of the rational side of yourself. And I think taking a little bit of time, maybe if you're in a difficult situation, just be prepared to say, okay, let's just come back, we'll go and we'll review that and we'll reconsider it. That for me is probably one of the best lessons that I've learned in my career. And sometimes when you've had a day or two to try and process something, you deal with it so much better than you do in the heat of the moment. So I think for me that's probably the best bit of advice that I could give myself is, you know, to try and give yourself a little bit of space, not be too hard on yourself, accept that you make mistakes, be prepared to learn from them, but give yourself time to do that learning. And I think if you do all of that, then you know you're not going to go through your career without having setbacks. You're not going to go through your career without making mistakes. You know, everyone does that, despite our best efforts not to. And a lot of it is how you handle that. So I think sometimes in those situations, if you take a little bit of time, then you'll handle it so much better. So if I'd known that 25 years ago, I'd have probably applied it a bit quicker than I do now, but looking back, that's a real important professional learning point for me.